global signals intelligence program of the United States is commonly known as Echelon and involves a partnership of several nations, with the United States itself being the dominant partner. Bound by a treaty known as the UK-USA Security Agreement, 5 nations are involved in the NSA program. They are the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, sometimes referred to as the Five Eyes. In each of these countries there is at least one special signals intelligence facility involved in either intercepting or processing electronic communications. Now, though the USA is indeed the dominant partner in the Five Eyes group, 2 of the most prominent bases in the Echelon matrix are outside mainland USA. One is located at Menwith Hill in England and the other at Pine Gap in Australia. Moreover, the Menwith Hill and Pine Gap bases form a special pairing, allowing them to tap into extremely low frequencies of the electromagnetic spectrum, most specifically 60 Hz, which itself is the main frequency of the US power grid system. A very special link between these 2 sites, unique to the NSA surveillance program, provides incontrovertible evidence of this, with the very nature of the link hinting at a very extraordinary feature of the whole network, one that is highly classified. Consider each of the key sites in turn. The Menwith Hill Signals Intelligence Base was first established in 1954 with the acquisition of some 545 acres of land by the British War Office, the land itself being subsequently leased to the USA. It was taken over by the National Security Agency in 1966. In 1974 it began to intercept satellite communications with radar dish antennas housed underneath a series of spherical ray domes. Construction then began on a facility whose primary purpose was to serve as a missile warning site, in addition to actively monitoring Soviet and Eastern Bloc diplomatic and military communications. The personnel is approximately 1,800, 1,200 US and 400 UK employees. Now, what has caused such heightened concern about this site, including the whole Echelon network, is a marked shift in focus. Rather than a narrow NSA spying program targeting purely foreign military traffic, it has morphed into a government surveillance tool targeting everybody on a global scale. Critically though, the increased capabilities of the Menwith Hill base were not just achieved by additional hardware installed at the site itself, but rather by the construction of a new signals intelligence base some 9,300 miles away in Australia at Pine Gap. A very special energetic frequency link between both sites was established as a result of this. It is very noteworthy that in the year 1966, when the NSA took over the Menwith Hill UK site from the US Army Security Agency, that in December of the very same year the US government signed the Pine Gap Treaty with the Australian government. The treaty allowed for the establishment on Australian soil of a new US-run facility, given the rather innocuous title of Joint Defence Space Research Facility. Now, as of the late 1990s, the complex had expanded to accommodate some 14 radar dish antennas housed underneath a series of spherical ray domes, the personnel at the site being somewhere over 1,000, mainly US citizens. In addition to this, there is one further intriguing fact to note about the Pine Gap base, and that is that the site is host to arguably the deepest drilled hole in the whole of Australia, near to 5 miles in depth. Indeed, according to the researcher Stan Deo, who once held an above top secret clearance and worked under Edward Teller as part of a team to study anti-gravity technology, those responsible for drilling the hole told him quite specifically that it was taken to a depth of at least 5.3 miles. The depth of such a bore allows it to broadcast very low frequencies by acting as an antenna. Now, the true secret of the Pine Gap base lies in its positioning. The location of the site under the 1966 treaty was not due to chance. Indeed, one might be forgiven for thinking that the NSA building could have been built pretty much anywhere in Australia, as undeniably large swathes of the country are composed of open desert. Selecting a preferred remote location would not, therefore, be too difficult. Be that as it may, the latitude-longitude position of the site was in fact determined by a very specific energetic consideration. The primary aim behind the positioning of the Pine Gap facility was to establish a link to its sister site at Menwith Hill, UK, via a very specific distance unit, one possessed of a harmonious relationship to the Earth itself, in addition to being associated with a basic 60 Hz frequency cycle under the electromagnetic light spectrum. The first step in revealing this is to be had from considering a most remarkable association between two values: the circular circumference of the Earth at its equator, and the arc distance between both NSA surveillance sites. Concerning the first, the equator of the Earth, one may note that under the most advanced Earth ellipsoid model in use today, the WGS-84 model, the Earth equatorial circumference is determined to be 24,901.46089 miles. Now concerning the second noted measure, one can see on screen a calculation giving the Great Circle distance connecting up the Menwith Hill and Pine Gap sites over the surface of the Earth. As one can clearly see, this is based upon the WGS-84 ellipsoid model. The Great Circle line over the surface of the Earth connecting up the two facilities is thus determined to be 9,338.37794 miles in length, and with a set of values in hand for both noted measures, one may next consider the ratio between them. From the calculation one can see that the ratio as obtained is very close to the exact fraction 8 divided by 3. Now what this implies is that if one were to divide the total equatorial circumference of the Earth by 8, one should have a value very close to the Menwith Hill Pine Gap separation distance itself divided by 3, and this indeed proves to be the case. Accepting a certain level of error, one can note that the average value of 3,112.737628 miles has a harmonic fit of 8 times to the Earth equator, and 3 times to the distance between the two NSA sites. What is the significance though of this value in terms of the electromagnetic spectrum? Well, in order to determine the frequency of any given propagating waveform under the EM spectrum, one must divide the speed of light by a given wavelength distance. In the case of 3,112.737628 miles, the following result is to be had. Now such a close match to a precise 60 Hz frequency does not lack significance, considering the fact that it is none other than the very AC frequency cycle of the United States power grid system. As a result, one can hardly pass off this connection as mere coincidence. Moreover, the fact of its existence appears to reveal the long-range global planning that has gone into expanding the echelon matrix over the past 50 years or so. In considering the link-up between the two echelon sites, including the noted deep-drilled hole at the Pine Gap site in Australia in particular, what then can be said of the system? Why was it built, and what can be achieved by the placement of the two sites in accordance with an 8/3 ratio linked to the Earth's circumference? The answer would appear to be had from a consideration of the work of the great pioneer of wireless communication, Nikola Tesla. During his lifetime, Tesla made many breakthroughs in wireless telegraphy and in establishing the physical principles and laws that govern the propagation of light waves, including the transmission of power over extreme distances, with or without wires. During his lifetime, Tesla laid out his grand vision of wireless communication globally between all peoples and cultures, and also of power generation and distribution to all corners of the Earth. In many publications he referred to it as his wireless world system, and though he did manage to lay out its core principles, including the technical means by which to achieve it, ultimately he was not able to garner sustained financial backing to realize his dream. Be that as it may, the key feature of the system was the active transmission of wireless signals and power through the Earth itself. Indeed, Tesla found that transmission of power through the Earth was easier than transmission through a wire. His world system required the construction of several primary facilities around the globe to generate and transmit power. These would be located at special positions upon the Earth, as would allow for resonant interaction with the planet. Indeed, the energetic excitation of the planet through resonance was critical to the system as a whole. When the Earth is struck mechanically, as is the case in some powerful terrestrial upheaval, it vibrates like a bell, its period being measured in hours. When it is struck electrically, the charge oscillates approximately 12 times a second. By impressing upon it current waves of certain lengths, definitely related to its diameter, the globe is thrown into resonant vibration like a wire, stationary waves forming, the nodal and ventral regions of which can be located with mathematical precision. By proper use of such disturbances, a wave may be made to travel over the Earth's surface with any velocity desired, and an electrical effect produced at any spot which can be selected at will, and the geographical position of which can be closely ascertained from simple rules of trigonometry. Bearing in mind then the importance Tesla placed upon the transmission of wireless signals and power through the ground, and of having terminals connected directly to the Earth to achieve resonant excitation of the planet, the function of the two noted echelon sites becomes readily apparent, most especially the Pine Gap facility located in central Australia. With its deep drilled hole some 5 miles in length, it is doubtless the case that the Pine Gap base houses a direct ground terminal connection to the Earth, forming part of an electrical mechanism for generating vast amounts of power through interaction with the planet through resonance. Indeed, the link up to the Menwith Hill site in the UK via a 60 Hz frequency connection certainly demonstrates that whatever is going on respecting these two sites is definitely tied into the generation and transmission of electrical power. Given this, one would certainly suspect that the Pine Gap site, as a functioning power plant, would be capable of producing electrical power far exceeding that of most nuclear power stations. Moreover, the power itself, as is capable of being transmitted through the Earth to any distance with precision, and to any amount as desired, would allow for the following: the reception of power at another site for industrial purposes, e.g. covertly powering underground military bases of strategic importance, or recharging the batteries of military vessels such as ships or submarines. The projection of a highly destructive effect at any given target location, e.g. creating an immense seismic event such as an artificial earthquake. Certainly the latter noted of the two features, most especially associated with the Australian site, will doubtless be heavily classified. Indeed, one would hardly expect US authorities to admit to their Australian counterparts such capabilities, which certainly would have found no place in the original 1966 treaty. It would seem then that the National Security Agency of the United States has in fact built Tesla's wireless world system in secret following the demise of its pioneer, who himself was unable to see it fully realized in his own lifetime. Unfortunately, however, it has not been built for the benefit of mankind as a whole, as the inventor wished, but instead for the benefit of a few, those advancing a secretive militaristic agenda. Now I just wish to end this presentation by saying that if you wish to know more about the echelon matrix and also other related matters, please visit my website occultphysics.com. The link is in the description box to this current video, and if you wish to support my work, you'll be able to buy a copy of my book, The Lost Age of High Knowledge, from my website. Not only does this cover the Pine Gap and Menwith Hill facilities, also I discuss how Buckley Air Force Base, which is located within the United States itself, is also tied in to the echelon matrix.